Can we retire with only $380,000 saved? Everybody's saying you need a million, million point two, and yet the same people are saying only 3.2% of the people achieve $1 million. So how is everybody else doing it? How is 96.8? How are 96.8% of the people retiring when they only have these kind of amounts, or anyway, much less than $1 million? We're going to go ahead and run some numbers for you, which is the spreadsheet we've set up here. 380,000. We're going to use numbers for the S&P 500 for the last 100 years. We're simply going to project ahead what similar returns might do for you in the future. Said the average retiree couple spends 50,289, I believe it was. So that'd be 4,200 a month. 50,289. This would be $50,400 a month. We're also going to use Social Security. Between the two the people, let's say they're getting 2,500, which is a little bit low. Actually, the average is well above 3,000. In fact, I think it's more like 3,800. But let's do the 2,500. That'd be a 5.37% withdrawal rate. What we're going to do to update this for every single year to see where you might be after 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years, given the returns that we've had for the last 100 years. So we're going to go ahead and update this. We're also doing a 3% COLA. And I failed to change this to a 60-40 asset allocation. Let me do that real quick. 60-40, meaning 60% stay in the S&P 500. They benefit from these up years, but 40% going over here in the cash reserve. In case we run into a string of bad years, you want to be able to take the money out of the cash reserve. There's a bucket over here. You do not want to take it out of the stock market when it's already going down. That would be selling low. That'd be making you a forced seller in a down market. You don't ever want to sell when the market's going down. That's why you have a bucket over here. Looks like 7% of the time in the last 100 years, given the numbers for the last 100, you would run out of money. Here's the actual graph here, folks. So $380,000, no problem. 93% of the time. The only times were during the Depression years and around the year 2000. Why? Because we had consecutive down years in this stretch, and also we all know the Depression years were bad. Well, look at that, folks. 93% of the time, 92.6 actually have money after 20 years. 84.5% after 30 years, you'd have your money lasting. But what happens if you don't have 2,500? What if between the two of you are getting 2,250? This is some of the things we can do. And now we're up to 6.16% withdrawal rate. How would that work? Let's go ahead and update this. Again, we're going to leave it at the 60-40 split. We're going to leave the 3% COLA. We're going to see how many times if you had $250 less come, now you're up to a 19% failure rate because you're up quite a bit above the 4% rule. The other was 5.37, I believe. So you're up to 6.16 withdrawal percentage. That's kind of high. Well, folks, if this is your scenario, if this is what you're getting from Social Security, is this what you have saved, what could you do differently? Watch what happens if we just make one minor change. Remember, we got 19% failure rate here. In fact, let me show you the graph. Got Depression years around the 1937, around the 73, 74, the end of the 60s. Why? Because we also had a consecutive down years in 73 and 74. So that's why we have a 19% failure rate. Still you're successful 81% of the time. This is after 20 years, but you're down to a 63% success rate, or in other words, a 36% failure rate after 30 years. That might be kind of hard to stomach. Watch what happens if we just do one minor switch. What happens if after a negative year like this, you don't take a 3% COLA? Let's actually do a 3% cut. Now, that would be a little bit painful, yes, but if it shows that you can have a better chance of your money lasting a lot longer or a higher percentage of it lasting longer, watch what happens when we update this, folks. 19% failure rate. Again, that's 81% positive rate, but 63% look at that, folks. It went to a 5% failure rate after 20 years. Isn't that impressive? Just changing to taking a negative COLA. Again, nobody knows. I mean, we don't know what the Social Security is for any individual. We're just running the numbers. But just to show you that $380,000 is plenty of money. It depends on what you're getting from Social Security. Again, we're doing a 60-40 asset allocation. In this case, if you just do that minor adjustment, going from a 3% COLA all the way through to whenever there's a negative down year, you adjust accordingly. Be variable in what you withdraw. It wouldn't be quite as painful taking a 3% cut as you might believe, but it allows your money to last. Instead of running out of money 19% of the time, like we saw before, now it's just 5% of the time. Again, you'd have to adjust your finances a little bit differently. Let's just do one more thing. Let's go to $4,000 a month. Let's go ahead and update this just to see what $200 a month makes difference when we don't change anything else. Instead of 4,200, we're down to 4,000. That's a 5.53% withdrawal rate. Look what it did, folks. It made your money last over 20 years, 100% of the time. Again, we went from 4,200 to 4,000 a month, and we used negative COLAs whenever we had down years. Now look at this, folks. Just $380,000 worked just fine, even with the lower Social Security amount that we kicked in here. Folks, that's what we do on this channel. We just love doing it for people. We set up all kinds of spreadsheets to run all kinds of different variables like your sequence of returns risk and your asset allocation. And we just change these numbers and show you, no, you don't need $1 million in order to retire comfortably, especially when you take into account Social Security and what you're getting from Social Security. But again, that's what we do on this channel. Please consider subscribing. Please share. Please like the videos. And thanks so much for watching.